Who are your heroes? And what makes for a hero? A Harris poll asked Americans that question, and the person who came in first was Jesus Christ. I understand that, but after Jesus, many people picked politicians. Ronald Reagan was second, Barack Obama third. President Obama ranked higher right after he was elected, then he placed first ahead of Jesus. Are any of those people your heroes? Some votes for Jesus, but not the politicians. But the list is politicians. George Bush is in the list, Hillary Clinton, FDR, Elizabeth Warren. Why politicians? What is so heroic about what they do? When I look at them, I see self-serving panderers who say anything to win, and once elected, dole out favors and money to their cronies. But that's not how the Hollywood left sees politicians. They see them as inspirational heroes.
Let the American people explode into this new millennium with the exhilaration of being true to the glory of this democracy. Thank you.
The music swells. This idea that the right politician will lift all of us up, bring us together, save the country, is just stupid. And worse, it's dangerous because it encourages people to turn to politicians for answers. And the way politicians do things, the way government does anything, is through force. We don't need more force. We need less. I finally came to understand that by listening to people who've thought about these things more thoroughly than I. People, for example, at the Libertarian Cato Institute, like David Mose, the author of The Libertarian Mind. Also here to tell us how Hollywood gets politics wrong is video producer John Popola. John, you used to work for MTV. Why does Hollywood want to make politicians heroes?
There's a belief that politics is a mechanism for everyone to be represented, whereas private industry and individuals only represent their own interests. And that's an appeal, I think, if you're trying to tell a story and get a broad audience, that, oh, the hero represents all of us if we vote for him, but...
It's sort of logical because the businessman's out for himself. The politician is there to help all of us.
But if I don't like what the businessman's doing, I can walk out the door. If I don't like what the politician's doing, I guess I have to go to Greece, or I don't know.
David?
Well, that's right. There's a lot of nationalism and tribalism. They're our leaders. They represent our country, and that's a big thing. Plus, politicians do big, dramatic, important things. They win elections, they fight wars, they fight battles, they give speeches. All of these things are more exciting than what most scientists and businessmen do.
The movie Dave was premised on the conceit that if only we got a nice, good person to be president, he'd solve all our problems. President Dave brings in his own accountant, who proceeds to wow the cabinet by showing how they can save an important welfare program.
That's another 47 million. So this is good. We're doing good. We're doing real good. We're on our way. Okay, let me just add that to the tally here. Makes $656 million, which means we can keep the program.
The impression in stories like that is that only a mean person wouldn't do these things for the people. I mean, they're focusing there on the cuts, but the point is there's a program. It'll help people get jobs. And any decent person, of course, would give them the program that helps jobs. So presidents who don't do that, there must be something wrong with them. They're mean. Now we see what a good politician would do.
And the media is supposed to be objective about all this stuff, but the left-wing media is worse than Hollywood in some cases. Watch a few of them fawn over big government politicians.
The feeling most people get when they hear a Barack Obama speech, I felt this thrill going up my leg. I mean, I don't have that too often.
Steady.
After the perfect Barack Obama, who's a perfect physical specimen.
Senator Warren, congratulations on your first bill. If I could just get your autograph here on my copy of the first Warren bill. This is very exciting. Nice.
For Lawrence, you bet.
This will be framed.
Are you kidding me? Asking for an autograph?
They're not my heroes.
Who are heroes to you?
The people who have most benefited humanity are not generally politicians. Now, you might say the American revolutionaries, they did something good.
George Washington.
But George Washington, James Madison, people like that. But most of the rest of American presidents are not people who have done something heroic. Heroic people, to me, are people who saved lives and made our lives better. There's a website you can find about the people who have saved the most lives in history, and you've never heard of these people. At the very top, Fritz Haber and Karl Bosch, they created synthetic fertilizer. It's estimated that half the food in the world is based on their findings. 2.5 billion people maybe are alive because of that.
Billions don't starve anymore because fertilizer's cheaper.
2.7 billion people are alive because of that. And then there's Carl Landsteiner and Richard Lewison, who discovered blood groups and blood transfusions, and there's 1 billion people whose lives may have been saved by them.
Edward Jenner invented the smallpox vaccine. 500 million lives
500 million
saved.
people might have died of smallpox if Edward Jenner hadn't discovered the vaccine.
Anybody heard of these people in the audience here? You also cite businessmen like Sam Walton, Ted Turner. Boy, I don't think of them as heroes. Walton is this greedy guy, started Walmart, makes a lot of get filthy rich.
He absolutely started that business in order to make money. But what he did was bring necessary stuff to working class people at lower prices than they could get it anywhere else. And that is he is a much greater benefactor of humanity than Barack Obama or Elizabeth Warren or any of these other politicians. And then there's a whole group of people. Ted Turner, who created CNN, Brian Lamb, who created C-SPAN, Jeff Bezos at Amazon, Jimmy Wales at Wikipedia, Larry Page and Sergey Brin at Google. What did these people do? They brought knowledge to the world. They brought transparency. We get to find out more or less what politicians are up to because of this.
But some of them just did it to make money.
Well, some of them didn't. Jimmy Wales created a charity. He may wish he didn't do that. But sure, they did it to make money. But that's because by the invisible hand, as Adam Smith put it, if you set out to make money, the only way to do it is to provide people with something they want.
One of the things that's a challenge when you're talking about media and filmmaking is the invisible hand is hard to film.
Well, that's a good point. Let's go back to Hollywood. I'm struck that many of these left-wing movies, they work on me, even though their arguments are just wrong. In the movie American President, I cheer when President Shepard finally comes to his senses, agrees with his leftist girlfriend, and trashes a conservative law.
I'm throwing it out and writing a law that makes sense. You cannot address crime prevention without getting rid of assault weapons and handguns. I consider them a threat to national security, and I will go door to door if I have to, but I'm going to convince Americans that I'm right, and I'm going to get the guns.
He's going to get the gun. It's a well, the audience thinks it's a stupid program, and so do I. But watching the movie, he's going to get the girl, and it just feels good, even to me. It's the magic of Hollywood.
Movies are about a narrative, and a narrative is driven by characters. And so we judge characters by the intentions. That's what their motivation is.
His intention is to help people, to stop crime.
And that's all that ends up mattering, I think, in the movie-making process. I think it almost works against liberty in a kind of structural way, I think.
All right, but sometimes Hollywood goes beyond just praising liberal politicians. They glamorize murderers like Che Guevara.
Before he knew where life would take him, Ernesto Che Guevara and his friend Alberto took the journey of their lives. An adventure in search of South America, in search of freedom.
Che Guevara was a mass murderer. He ordered individuals shot and he ordered masses of people shot. They don't do this for Nazis, but somehow communism still has this romantic idea that somehow it was for the people, it was against the bosses. It's a terrible thing. We're right now taking Confederate flags off every place in America, out of Walmart, off of Amazon, which is fine, but we're still selling and wearing Che Guevara t-shirts. Somebody said the other day, what if you had a t-shirt showing Che Guevara flying a Confederate flag? Could you get away with that?
Your community is so anti-capitalist in their attitude, and yet they're all looking to make money. They're all ruthlessly competitive.
In my experience, Hollywood is actually the most Randian capitalist environment I've ever been in. It's entirely transactional. When you go around and you try to pitch your project, there's almost no moral judgment whatsoever, and I don't mean that in a moral way.
Can it make money?
It's entirely about the bottom line, and I think in some ways that experience for creative people working in the industry actually turns them against capitalism that much more.
They're ashamed of themselves.
Or they're ashamed of the system that they feel like is benefiting a handful of people in their own industry, yet alone the society at large.
But once in a blue moon, they get it right, like the first Ghostbusters movie. It makes an officious EPA bureaucrat the villain.
He says they have a warrant.
Excuse me, this is private property. Shut this off. Shut these all off. I'm warning you, turning off these machines would be extremely hazardous.
I'll tell you what's hazardous. You're facing federal prosecution for at least a half a dozen environmental violations. Now, either you shut off these beams or we shut them off for you.
The bureaucrat then forces them to turn off the machines and ghosts destroy the city.
It's the best libertarian movie ever made, Ghostbusters. Right after they've somehow managed to get kicked out of academia, Dan Aykroyd says, "You don't know what it's like to be in the private sector. I've been there. They expect results." And it's sort of encapsulated. It's kind of amazing that movie got made. It's really only in the 1980s, I think, that movie could have been made.